The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone. First order of business, let's make sure you can hear me, okay? If some people would just type in a yes or a Y into the chat box or something, we would be good. Good, thank you. I like that. Well, I welcome all of you, and I love this stuff. And I have found the amazing thing is, who would have thought that trading is a pathway to self-mastery? Yet, that's what we're looking at today. We're looking at emotional self-mastery of the trading mind under stress. Isn't that interesting? Now, by the way, I give a presentation, and at the end, I take questions. If you have questions as I'm going through this material, then please, by all means, write the questions in the question box, and I'll get to them when I finish. And otherwise, we'll just go from there. Fair? Good for you. Okay. What it really comes down to is many people come to trading with a winning attitude. They've been very successful in other pursuits of their life, and they think that those winning attitudes, those winning ways are going to work. They're going to work in trading. All they have to do is learn the game of trading, and they're going to be fine. And they take that in, and generally I see them 3 to 4 years after that, where they've realized in 3 or 4 years, they're not making progress. If they're profitable at all, they're marginal. They've had ups and downs. They can see where, they've made money, they've lost money, they've given it back. They're in this cycle, and they just don't understand why. Look, I did well, Randy. I know how to do this. And so something is ajar. Something appears to be so different about trading compared to the rest of the world, to business, to corporate, to whatever you were doing before you got into trading. And what we want to do is we really want to take a look at that, because the truth is trading is very different. Your mind was never built for it. And when it comes down to it, here's what really happens is the old ways that you brought are simply not going to work. Those tried and true ways, no matter how good they were, no matter how comfortable you are with them, you need to be listening to your trading account. Your trading account is really your best friend. It may not tell you the information that you want to hear, but it will tell you about if you're winning ways, if that is actually working in the new world of trading. And if it's not, then you're going to have to find another way of working with the program. So, most people stay stuck right there. This is where they're smart, they're logic driven, they've got a plan, they're looking for the way that can be done, and they look at it on the spreadsheet and they see the numbers. And they go, wow, I can have that. I'm going to be there. I'm going to get that. Then again, 3 to 4 to 5 years later, they find them stuck, kind of trapped, and they don't know. They just simply don't know what's going on. They know that they've had a way of working the world that has brought good success, and they get in, and something powerfully changes. And this is where it really is. What it really boils down to is that you're going to, could you move the, no, you didn't.
Yeah, I did. I moved up here. It didn't work.
Okay. Any rate, the point is this. The big, huge thing is this. Your brain is built for certainty-based, dealing with a certainty-based environment. It wants to be in control over outcome, over the environment, really. It wants to do something. It does not want to lose. Because if you look at it from that brain's perspective, you have a very primitive brain underneath, hiding underneath that big, huge, gigantic thinking mind, the brain of yours. And it's very primitive. It doesn't think in language. It perceives in terms of threat, something that's fearful or needs to be worked with aggression or approach. And it's very certainty based. It wants to win, it does not want to lose. And it just so happens We as human beings did that. From 6.5 million years ago till today, that simple formula of certainty-based thinking, controlling outcome, not losing, and making things happen works so good as a species that, hey, it's easy to work this environment. We've become the dominant species on this planet. The problem is this. The certainty-based mindset that your brain is built for isn't what works in trading. Trading requires a probability-based mind where you realize that you're not in control of outcome. You're not in control of winning and losing. What you're in control of with a probability-based mind is the mind you bring in to the moment of performance. It is here in the typical thinking of trading that if you have a system that has an edge, and if you bring a mind that can execute that edge, then what happens is you extract more capital out of the markets than you give back. That sounds really great. The problem is you have a caveman brain that wants to win because he gets to live another day. He doesn't want to lose because losing means a threat to your very existence. If you've ever seen that happen when a trade starts going against you and it's heading toward your stop, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. I hate losing. I hate losing. Well, your caveman brain is talking, saying, I'm fighting for my life. And this is where it happens right here. This is a very primitive brain. It doesn't know about money. It doesn't know about capital. What it perceives money as is control, power, safety, competence. And when you start taking a loss, it sees that being shattered. It cannot separate the figures you see, the greenbacks, and life and death. It's a primitive caveman brain called the emotional brain or the limbic system. It's held together by a brain that's been around for about 40 million years. And in human beings and becoming Homo sapiens, it becomes to have it literally is a brain that has allowed us to survive and to prosper and to master things beyond belief. And now you're asking it to do something that honestly, it just simply can't do. It can't do. And it's a very primitive brain. And you're asking that primitive brain to do something that it was not built to do. And we'll take a silly illustration to demonstrate that. Here, you're looking at this thing, and you have our caveman friend sitting here, and it's going, you know something? It looks at it, and I'm being a hunter and gatherer, and I'm hunting and gathering things and stuff like that. And then something shows up, okay? And that something that shows up is first interpreted through the eyes of anxiety and fear. That's what allowed us to do it. And it's saying, do I have danger of this, or is this something that can provide a meal? So this is it. If that had been a saber-tooth tiger, it would have been very, very different. But the point is, when something occurs in the environment, your brain becomes a negative assessment machine because it worked. Worrying, having anxiety about the future worked. But also, I might add, is jumping and understand, man actually hunted these creatures. That would be something like a mammoth, okay? They hunted them down and they got excited to see them over trading. The excitement of the thing. That's what's happening, is that the old brain is simply misinterpreting what it's being able to see and what it's doing. It doesn't know it's in the 21st century. It doesn't know about trading. It doesn't know about probability. It knows about survival in the moment. When it sees that big, huge mastodon coming and he's just one single man trying to gather some stuff, what it triggers is fear. This is dangerous. I need to leave the area. When in trading, you have to develop a mind that can take a loss simply because it's a game of probability. And your job is to keep losses small. Caveman doesn't want to take a loss at all because it means his life. So you see this dilemma, and this is what you've brought to trading. And then you expect it just to turn on a dime, and you're basically expecting a higher primate to speak English to us. It's not going to happen. They can do sign language though. Now, all that emotions are going to react to conditions before thinking ever occurs. It's really interesting. My kind of reading is I'm currently reading a book where a neuroscientist is talking about working with fruit flies and mice. And they like to work with fruit flies simply because it's only 100 neurons in their brain. And what they discover there is that emotions there are called biological action potentials. And what happens if you wave a swatter over the fruit flies, they see the shadow and react. There is no thought, there is no thinking. What happens is that somewhere in the evolution from that fruit fly to the human brain, this big, huge, gigantic brain showed up. So we have cognition that also filters through emotions. Easily the most common one is fear. We're built around fear. It helped us survive. So that's what we're going to have. And the moment that it happens, the actual emotion firing has already happened before thinking even begins to think that's about showing up. So unless you can change the way your primitive brain reacts to uncertainty, you're going to have a very difficult time trading because it's always going to be there. And to show you what I mean is this. Take a look at this guy. Have you ever been around a big bear? Well, I have. And I can tell you right now, they get your attention. You are asking for a short-term survival-focused brain to stay calm when losing, when losing it thinks it's being attacked by a bear, by a saber-toothed cat. And this is what happens. And understand, you're engaging uncertainty all the time when you trade. So you're firing this stress reaction, firing this attack avoid moment all the time if you have not learned how to manage it. So the key is how do you do this? And what I want to do is for those of you, this is actually from Inside Out by Pixar Disney, and what you're looking at is their representation of the emotional program anger inside a little girl's mind. And as you can see that, it's reacting to changes in the environment, and it has a very localized way of expressing itself through anger and aggression. At the same time, you could have had anxiety that's going to be reacting in a different way. All this is you have a fear-based brain in charge of managing a probability-based type of business, okay? And my promise to you is when there's stress on the line, when you're risking capital, when you're risking life, your power, your safety, all that stuff, what you're doing is you're triggering your survival instincts to trip and to wash out the ability to think. And all of a sudden, rational thinking's gone. Rational thinking's gone. And I don't personally find a whole bunch of rational thinking going on in the world anyway. So my question is, I know that everybody has tried to work this thing, and I know that you're coming here tonight is just simply telling, what I've discovered is that people are trying to find something that actually works. But how many of you have tried positive mental attitude? I'm going to think positive and I'm going to make this thing. I'm going to use visualization of what I want to become. I'm going to use affirmations. I'm going to train the subconscious to be the profit machine that I want to be. NLP, I'm going to do that too. And oh yeah, I might as well do some tapping. And hypnosis, I can just change everything over that. And then that prosperity, thinking that mind over matter. What happens here is a lot of these techniques make you feel good. And by feeling good, you think, oh, wow, that's cool. I want more of that. That's what the brain does. But does it produce continued success over time? And for most of the people I've been working with for the last 15 years is no, it doesn't. It doesn't work. It breaks down under stress. It's okay when you're talking about it, but when you're actually in the midst of it, you actually have to find something that truly works. So I'm asking you that, and if it has, great. If you're like the most of us who have gone through that and they've tried this, they've tried that, and they've discovered that, it sounds good when they're talking about the secret and stuff like that, but when you actually see it in operation, it falls apart. But they sell a lot of stuff. So we see that, and we're recognizing, well, how do we go about, how do we go about changing the brain to produce a different mind? That's more interesting, isn't it? The work of trading is really rooted in patient observation, not urgency. What I want you to imagine is the American cougar, seen here, and the African lion. You've seen those big, huge guys. They're two apex predators that are built for completely different environments. The African lion, successful as he is a stalker, is a chaser. And they hunt down big prey and get beat up a lot. They get kicked, they get gored. So there's a high capital loss. So they have to breed a lot more capital. They have a lot more cubs and start going stuff like that. However, the American cougar doesn't do it that way. They do not stalk. They ambush. What the cougar is going to do is going to climb a tree like here, and he's going to understand the deer and the way it works. He's going to know the setups. He's going to know where the paths are. He's going to locate a perch above that, and he simply patiently waits. What's also interesting about cougars is that they don't chase the prey. What they do is they come down screaming from a 20-foot perch and snap the neck of the deer, and it falls, boom, just like that. If there's a mistake made and that is not what happened, the deer escapes, the cougar doesn't chase. It takes it as a small loss, climbs back up over the tree, and patiently waits for the next setup of deer. So the work in trading is much more like this American cougar than the alpha who has brought in the African lion. So the real key is that what we're looking at, we're not saying that the mind you brought is bad. What we're saying is does the mind that you bring to trading, does it fit the tasks that you're asking that are necessary in this game of trading? And if you're 98% of the people who are retail trading, the answer is no. And we're going to have to decide whether or not you want to become developing a brain and mind that can deal in probabilities and risk, or whether or not you want to control outcome. It's kind of like, well, how do you go about transforming, this urgency to act into patient discipline? Well, it's a process, and more about that later, but I teach a process that really first teaches you how to manage emotions, then observe thought, and then begin to construct what kind of emotional programs and cognition come together in a moment of stress. That's performance psychology. So the first thing that has to happen is you're going to have to decide whether or not you really enjoy trading enough to go in and change the way you think. Okay? That would be the really big deal. Because what's happened to your emotional brain, the potential of loss is like that shark. And it's going to crank. If you've ever revenge traded, you know what it's like to try to beat the person up. If you've ever over traded, you know what it's like to try to, I'm going to make this, I'm going to make that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make the money, but I'm going to. And also, when you've taken that loss, you've seen how that feels. You've seen the caveman brain work. However, what you're ultimately doing is you're like this person here, you are calming the physical system down. It's the personal self-mastery of the mind. It's kind of like one time the Buddha was traveling with a group of people, and they're going into the area of where a tiger was a man-eating tiger. And everybody but the Buddha decided to leave for that night and go find better places to be around. The Buddha stayed in the camp, and in fact, that tiger came. But the Buddha was more like this female person right here. In the meditation, he experienced no fear toward the tiger. The tiger didn't even notice that it was there. It did not see it as prey. So we can begin to see how the smell of fear gets in the way and starts just blowing out the mind. What we want is to start saying, what kind of process do you use, Randy, to transform the mind that trades? And I can tell you right now, it's 5-step in our work. It's the first piece of my work. And all this, by the way, these 5 steps are included in the group course that we're starting in June. The first piece, though, starts with emotional regulation. The way you breathe, the way you hold tension is accelerating fight-flight, or it's calming down fight-flight. The breath and the tension that you hold in your body are, in fact, parts of the emotion. And by doing this, what you do is you regulate the emotion so that it never just wipes out the mind. This is the first step in the metamorphosis from just simply being this person who has no idea what they're doing to amass emotional self-mastery. So that first step, emotional regulation, how do you manage emotions before they take over the trading mind? This is where you really begin to recognize is that we don't understand emotions very well at all. We tend to think of them as feelings, and we don't want to have them. We don't want to have bad feelings. Like, for God's sake, don't give me that shame feeling. I feel shame when I lose, and I'm going, actually, you don't know how to use that emotion. You use shame to deconstruct the current organization of self that you are and to construct it into higher functioning. But it takes a lot of courage to be able to do that. So you have to be able to hone that courage, to hone that discipline, to hone that clear thinking, to be able to build a self. In the first place that it starts with managing the emotion. Because ultimately, if you cannot manage the emotion, you never get to the door of the mind. Will emotional state management of the regulation sort solve the problem of your trading? No, it's not. But if you cannot regulate the emotion, you never get to the door of the mind. You just simply get wiped out. And so what we're doing is we're saying, I need to develop my EQ, my emotional intelligence. I figure that if you're in trading and you've plowed the kind of energy into it that I figure that most of the people I talk to have, you've got the knowledge, you're smart, you're all that stuff, but you can't use that smart under combat conditions. And that is literally what you've got to do. And so let's take, for example, what does this really look like? What does your encounter with uncertainty, with risk and money on the line, what does it actually look like to your caveman brain? Well, here it is, folks. You ready? Boom. There you are. You're sitting there and a saber-toothed tiger is bearing down on you, okay? You're just sitting there. And you might imagine that hypervigilance triggers and activates the arousal element of the emotion. You would notice that by the pulse rate increasing. You would notice that by you holding your breath or panting, okay? And you would notice that it's moving on. And that arousal turns on the feeling component of the emotion. The feeling component of the emotion is not a psychological feeling. It is the feeling of the chemistry of the emotion entering the bloodstream and the brain, beginning to alter the way you perceive. That's what it is. It's very powerful because once that happens, the chemistry of the emotion floods the body and brain, and then suddenly what happens is the emotion's motivation compels you to attack, avoid, or approach depending on the direction that the emotion is taking you. Most of you know attack, avoid really well, fear and anger really well. Very few of you know how to go, approach. I've got a calm, disciplined impartiality that I'm approaching the uncertainty with, allowing me to think in probabilities rather than certainties. Meanwhile, your caveman brain sitting there eyeball to eyeball with the smell of death. Is it there? No. What happens is it's a trade. There's probability. The caveman brain doesn't look at it that way. It sees the chance of loss as a danger and a threat to self, which produces vulnerability, which produces confusion, which triggers the fight-flight process. So that's the very first thing that has to happen. So understand, the way the emotional brain sees a trade going against you is like that caveman in front of the saber-toothed cat. And by the way, this is an exaggeration. The saber-toothed cat's fangs were only 6 inches. These are about a foot, but still enough to go through the hide of a woolly mammoth. So you're looking at this, and suddenly what's happened is that motivation triggers, and then the emotional belief about your capacity to manage the challenges of trading consumes your thinking. If they're probability based, you're in good shape. If they're survival based, you've just blown another opportunity. Okay? This is what we've got. And then once that emotion takes over, particularly the belief, and these are all about beliefs about your capacity to manage literally the uncertainty that's right in front of you. Your caveman brain most likely is going to have a totally different story, because the moment that it cannot control outcome, it's in mortal danger, and it's going to act from there. You have to train the brain to react very differently, so that as you approach uncertainty, even a loss doesn't mean death. A loss just simply means you landed on the wrong side of probability. And also, by the way, to the trader, well trained, is that winning only means you landed on the right side of probability. It is absolutely no reason at all to get excited. And by the way, excitement in trading is dangerous. It leads you to euphoric thinking, and euphoric thinking leads you to making decisions that you will regret. Now, let's get to the third step in this process. Please go. Hold on, I think I'm out of place here. Hold on, guys. I am. Yes, how I did that, I don't know. So, the deal is we have to learn to manage the biology of the emotion. And that leads to a calmer mind under the pressure of risking capital. That's what has to happen. And again, it's literally allowing that person in this thing to decide what mind he's going to bring into the moment, rather than to have the emotional brain reactively decide for him. That takes training, friends. So, the second step is mindfulness. In mindfulness, what we really discover is this, is we begin to recognize that you and your thoughts are not the same. You and your beliefs are not one and the same. You and your emotions are not one and the same. A lot of us say, oh, that's just me. No, that is a particular organization of the potential that you exist as, and it has been constructed into a particular brain and mind. What we're looking to do is begin to quit identifying with thought and belief, stepping back and to recognize one powerful thing. You have been projecting your hidden beliefs onto the markets forever. And what we have to be able to do is we have to begin to recognize that we need to root out the beliefs that we have in our performances, not the ones you say you have, the ones that are easy, armchair quarterbacking on Monday morning, but no, the ones that are actually being revealed in your performances. That's what we want to do. And there, what we want to look at in mindfulness, we want to really begin to change the conception, okay, of how you see brain and mind. I offer you the concept of the brain as a committee of rival emotional programs that really just absolutely duke it out, and they want to win, and the winner takes all and constructs a self. When that brain produces mind, a miracle happens. Those emotional programs are given voice, that you understand its thoughts in the mind. What we want to be able to do is to recognize, oh, there's like a governing committee. And most likely the CEO, the chairman of the board, you, have been asleep at the wheel, and you begin to wake up in mindfulness and you recognize, oh my God, I've got a mutiny. I have a totally unruly group of a management here that I need to get into shape. I need to start finding out who's who, because you'll find there are some destructive elements of the self who want to take the self one way, and you'll see constructive parts that want to take it another. And there has been no ruler there to be able to really take anchor and to really clean the house of the trading mind and to construct a mind based on parts, voices that can actually trade well. This is where it really starts. And here, so when we get that idea that there's lots of stuff, I take you into step 3, where we're looking at the historical internal dialogue. And what you keep hearing, these thoughts you keep hearing in your head, have you ever really listened carefully to them? Well, you discover there's a lot of banal just stuff going on, but there's also some pretty powerful stuff. And it's very common for traders when they start becoming honest that they start hearing thoughts like, I'm never going to make it. What did I think? God, I'm stupid. I'm a loser. I can't handle this. You start hear them battling. Of course, they don't want to hear that, but that gives that inner critic living within you even more power. And you realize, wow, I need to really begin to understand this historical internal dialogue, because here's what it's like. It's like there is a judge, a criticizer, or a tempter on your shoulder talking to you. And unfortunately, you haven't produced the mindfulness to be able to decide, is this the group of people, parts of myself, that I want organizing into a governing committee and making decisions? And you hear this stuff and you don't know who this is. You don't know, these are just my thoughts. No. These, you don't have thoughts. They're having you. They're making your experience. And again, that board of directors is composed of both destructive and constructive elements. Unless they're really ruled well, you give an enormous amount of energy to what is known as the inner critic and to the adapted voice. The adapted voice I often call orphan, and it is your response to threat, to changes in the environment. The inner critic is the part that judges you. It's the one that when you take a loss, that you all of a sudden hear this voice inside your head that says, oh, you're a loser. That's the inner critic. It's not you. It's not the truth. But it's like misinformation. If you keep telling people the same thing over and over again, many of them, particularly the weak-minded, begin to believe it. It's your avoidance of this internal struggle that gets you into trouble. And if you're going to become successful in trading, this is one that you're going to have to master because it's subtle. It's very subtle. So from there, you have inherited a brain built for short-term survival. But more than that, you have also inherited self-limiting beliefs. And guess where you get them from? You get them from your family of origin, you get extended family, your community, their culture, from circumstances that happen. But the thing is, they're the ones that shape, when you see information in a chart, it's those beliefs that are altering your perception of them. And I'll give you an example of that. This happened to me last week. Is I'm working with a trader, and he's in some of my advanced stuff. And so he's got heart rate monitor. He has an app that puts the heart rate in particular parameters that relate to really good performing mind and not so performing good mind. Okay. And he said, Randy, it's really interesting. I was managing myself really well. I'm looking at it and I can see my heart rate within a particular range. I take a look at my chart and I read it one way and it's a good way. I'm comfortable with it. Everything's going fine. And then about that time, I got a call with some bad news. Okay. And what happened is I turned around, I looked at my heart rate, it had jumped, which means that suddenly he's been hijacked. He said, I looked at the charts and I saw a completely different chart. I interpreted completely different. This is the power of the self-limiting beliefs living within the self. And your job is to route them out. They're not to pretend they're not there, but no, your job is to find they're there and to recognize that your destiny, your honor, your everything, your duty as a trader is to be able to master those self-limiting beliefs. And by the way, they're easy. It's not rocket science. Self-limiting beliefs I work with day in and day out with traders is mattering. A lot of people, particularly alpha type people, think that they need to make money to matter. You know, if I make money, I have power, I have prestige, I have all that stuff, I have safety, I have control. And of course, the problem with making money in trading is you don't control that. You control performance, and it blows up a lot of people. The second one is worth. Many people confuse their self-worth with their net worth. And they think if I have money, I'll be worthy. Other people don't believe they're worthy of making easy money. Other people don't believe that they're worthy of making more than a certain amount of money. This is the worthiness that becomes a self-limiting belief. It contains you. The next one is competence. You don't believe you're good enough. Just don't believe you're good enough. No matter what I do, I just don't think I'm good enough. And you hear this inner critic saying, you know, you've taken a loss, you're a loser, blah, 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 blah. He goes on like that. The fourth one is scarcity. Some people call that FOMO. I find it easier to call it scarcity because what happens is you believe that what you have will be taken from you. That's entry problems. When you, oh my God, what if I lose? Or when you get into the green, then you take the skinny profit rather than letting it ride to target because you're scared that the money that you finally have made is going to be taken from you. That's the operational belief in action. The last belief that concerns traders is powerlessness. Now, you would experience that like when you're in a trade and it starts going against you and it's riding and you're just really managing it and you feel overwhelmed. That, and then you go bananas. That's powerlessness. And so you're recognizing, oh, these are the 4 age-old self-limiting beliefs that I'm going to have to belly up to and master. You're not going to conquer like I beat them down. You're going to master them. How do you do that? In step 4 of my work, I talk about awakening the empowered self. We all have undeveloped potential that is burned into our DNA. Most of the what happens most of the time in the families we grew up in, the circumstances we grew up in, those elements are not allowed to manifest. They're not groomed. They're not nurtured into being. For instance, when I was growing up, I grew up in a retired military family where my dad was also chief aeronautical engineer on a cargo jet called the C-141. It just so happens it was a kind of military rule. And as a kid, if my ruler, this disciplined part of myself who could tell right from wrong, showed up, it was not a good day. You know, there was a military rule hierarchy set up in my house. And so that part of myself simply was not developed until I started discovering it missing. So what are these parts of the self that we actually need to change? Okay? This is where it gets down, is what we need to do is we need to develop the courage we have inside us as potential to that of a warrior. And the major thing, understand warriors, it's not as if they don't experience fear. What happens is they act in the presence of fear. They realize that it is they who have to slay the dragon that holds them back. Also, what is necessary is to develop the discipline of a ruler. That's the ability to maintain order under pressure. And I use George Washington here because if it hadn't been for George Washington, there wouldn't be a United States. Interestingly, a number of years ago, when Doris and I were in China, I was speaking to a large fund, and instead of George Washington, I put in Mao Zedong. And after I gave that speech, I had a number of Chinese people come up to me and say, never use that name again in front of us. It just so happens, the public image of Mao Zedong and what the population believes are very different things. What I want you to recognize, the other thing that's important is self-compassion, the self-soothing of a caregiver. This is one of the harder ones, but it also is the most necessary, because if you want to change the brain so that it becomes a probability-based mind, you're going to have to use self-compassion to soothe, to calm, to nurture these emerging parts of the self. When you've done all that, when you've had the courage, when you've had the discipline, when you've done the self-compassion to calm yourself down, what's happened is the impartiality of a sage is able to show up and actually trade, to make good decisions. It's like the trader I was saying, that at one heart rate level, he was able to see the charts in one way. At a higher level, he saw a completely different chart, which led to, tragically, very different conclusions. So these are elements living within you. These are the elements that are living within you that we have very specialized way from being able to go through memory and to access these particular emotional programs, and then symbolically glue them to symbols like George Washington or Mother Teresa to that emotional state. And again, this is when it's powerful. And out of this is when we come to the moment of saying we actually need to build the intention. We have to become the change we're looking for. Instead of reading about it, instead of talking about it, we have to become it. And I ask you, this is a very famous painting of George Washington and a sneak attack on the Prussians. I believe it's across the Delaware. And they're going across, and I want you to look at that. Those guys, these guys inspire the confidence in them to go attack the best soldiers in the world at that time. Of course, a surprise attack. But you're seeing that I have to develop this. This is not something that just is going to, I'm going to use NLP and I'm just going to do it a few times and boom, it's there. No, this is something where you actually have to go into the neurobiology of a circuit and a pathway and begin to change it and to begin to reorganize it into higher working potential. It can be done, and that's a lot of the course that we do. Now, so ultimately, this is always about being able to master the dragons of fear, sabotage, and impulse. They become dragons. They really step in your way. And until you learn to do that, and I want you to notice is that this man is not slaying the dragon. He's mastering the dragons. And mistakes that you make are simply showing you where you need to look and to develop. One of the major pieces of my work is about finding inherent worth within you so that you're able to separate your performances from your being. The inner critic will do everything it can to make your performances the equivalent of your being. So when you take a loss, you're a loser. But this is really being able to separate it and realizing that your performances are about the development of competency. Your being is simply something that trading doesn't speak to. That is a completely different domain of action. So we're looking at that and going, okay, I understand the course of self-mastery here that's really required in trading works at the very core of the being. You will become a different human being. You will change. And you will change to become more empowered for the better. That's kind of the way trading forces you to go. And lastly, the real question, if once you grasp that your brain is a community of rival programs and that your mind is a governing committee, the real question is that who are you going to put on that committee in an active way? Who are you going to put? Who are you going to listen to? Who are you going to channel, to summon, to show up to produce the mind that engages uncertainty? Is the mind that you got right now working? Probably not to the degree that you need it to be working. Are you willing to put in the effort and invest in yourself so that you are producing the mind that can move beyond the caveman that's doing your trading for you under pressure to where you're working with probability? It takes a different mind. It takes a very different mind. And that's where it's at. And so it really comes down to you. But who's going to populate your trading committee? Who is going to do that? For those of you who recognize that this thing is just simply not going to change by itself, or by clicking your heels and wishing you were in Kansas again, when you realize, how do I become the change? What I'd like to do is I would like to invite you to our upcoming group course. Our group courses literally goes over the very 5 things that we demonstrated here. That is the process that is taught in the course. But you're taught not knowledge, you're actually taught the skills that allow you to produce the mind. Big difference. It includes 5 group sessions with me. It's webinar format. The meetings are recorded because we get it. You know, we work all over the time zones. And we know that not everybody can be there at the same time. And you receive all the copies. The virtual classroom, you have unlimited access to 24/7. Our next class starts June 16th. Registration is open now. And what I would like to be able to give you a free gift that's worth $200, not to entice you to either decide to or not to come to the workshop. We will have plenty of people in the workshop, okay? What we want is for them to be successful. We have found that we like traders to be working for 2 weeks to a month with the initial programs of emotional regulation before you get there. To encourage you to do that, I want to give you this free gift. That will prepare you for this thing starts at a run. I mean, you hit the road running, and a lot of people who just, I'll think about it in the last minute. Okay, yeah. That's not what we're looking for. And that gift is only good through 6/10, by Friday 6/10. If you register and you get it. So that's the one thing that I would really encourage you to look at. We also have an individual course that is highly comprehensive, very personal. And that's not what I want you to be looking at right now. But if you are going to do that, and if you're very serious, contact us. We'll talk to you about it.
And then other materials on the website.
Oh, and by the way, if you have not been to my YouTube channel, please go. I mean, it's got well over 200 videos on it. A lot of people do Randy Howell marathons and use all that stuff. Look at all the articles. There's a lot of, I'm a content-friendly website. Go there, learn. Get the book. Get the free book if you haven't already got it. Buy the book. Start really looking at what you need to be able to do this. So that's my invitation to you. My hope is that you invest in yourself and recognize that the brain you brought to trading, no matter how good it's been in the past, it's just simply not up to the task. You need to retrain. And this is where we start. So that's the deal. And I wish you so much. I wish you well. And now we've got a few minutes for some questions. And Doris getting me ready. Here's one. Here's one.
Yeah.
Okay, sir, my name's Randy, but I appreciate that. I read your book multiple times. All 5 steps are well mentioned: safe place, diaphragmatic breathing, mindfulness, inner critic, money, memory enrichment to create various archetypes in your work. I can't read the rest of it.
In your book.
Then how group course is different from I gave you knowledge in the book. I didn't teach you how to use that knowledge. That's the big deal, is that you will read my stuff and I give away a lot of knowledge. What I recognize is it's the same, practically everybody I know knows trading. They just can't do it when they trade. This is really teaching you the tools of creating the psychological edge to be able to use the knowledge that you read in the book. That's the difference. Okay, how does a person work on improving worthiness? Does awakening the empowered self work indirectly improving worthiness? Please give an example to clarify. Thanks. Good question, Rachel. Is first of all, in my work, there is actually a piece called Inherent Worth. And what we're doing is we're using a biological way of getting at the inherent worth that humans are born into, that social mammalians have. So it works from there, and depending on how you, and from there you begin to recognize that the beliefs you have about the self are not yours. And what you learn is that, okay, what Randy's telling me, all social mammalians have this element of inherent worth. That's why so much trouble is, it's like if you take a look at a group of elephants that are being scouted by lions, what you will see is the adults are standing between the lions and the young elephant. They're doing that because those young elephants, those baby elephants, represent the future. They have inherent worth to the pack that they're willing to put themselves at risk to do. You will see that in human beings. You will see that right now. You'll see that in the Ukraine war. You will see people, there's an organization now recruiting Americans that are skilled in certain weapon systems to go to Ukraine. And there's a lot of them. What the Americans, now these are retired guys, are saying, look, these people are worth it. They deserve this kind of stuff. I need to do this.
Retired military.
Yeah, these retired military. What I want you to get is they've never met these Ukrainians, but they feel the inherent worth in those. When you take a look at, you remember a few years ago, there was a Thai soccer team that got trapped in a cave that required that
A bunch of boys.
they're teenagers, and it captivated the world. People from all over the world came to help those boys get out of there. They didn't know them. What they did is they recognized the inherent worth. It's the same thing here. Is the work that I do, particularly with the guided meditations, I have a spiritual side where you're actually going to an internal master and asking about your worthiness. And if you grew up in a really hell-bent Christian sect, then I'm sorry for you. But the key is that you are also getting at this moment of where all social mammalians have this, and you're beginning to recognize first that it exists within you, no matter what you were taught in your family of origin. And you're going to have to escalate it. And I have the tools there to help you do that. But that's enough right now, Rachel. Good question, though. Here's from Bill or William. I took your group course, and I have also taken proprietary trading course, and I have years of trading experience. I still have nothing but overall losses to show over time. I just keep reverting back to poor trading habits. Are there any additional training courses or therapies that will help me break this endless destruction of my trading account? What a great way of understanding that. Thank you. Now, this is the problem with the group course, is it's built to disseminate the basic skill sets needed to produce the mind. But in the individual course, it is focused really much more deeply on our orphan nature, the adapted nature, and getting at the inherent beliefs that drive that repetitiveness of doing that. And this is something, understand, I am a student of my own work. I grew up in a profoundly alcoholic home where both my parents were master black belt alcoholics. And I grew up with let's just say that I had a very distorted view of reality. And if their chaos wasn't there, I would create it. And if I can come through that and end up where I'm at, anybody can. But the deal is that you're asking this course is very popular. It got created because I had a number of trainers coming to me saying, Randy, I need to be able to start training these guys so they understand what's going on, but it has to be affordable to them. And that's exactly what this course is. But it doesn't have the ability of getting at that deeper beliefs that what you're saying are showing up repetitively in the patterns of your life. The individual course gets at that kind of stuff. This is from Jordan. Which one of your meditations on your website would you recommend working through first? Or is it purely a personal preference? There's actually one that I have as a great favorite. It's the mindfulness one, Room as a Door. I actually use that. It's the only one that I use in my courses. That would be the one where the most indispensable thing in the world is to be able to separate from identifying with thought. That is the most powerful thing to start. All the other stuff comes after that, but that would be the one. And this host,
Mrs.
Basrat. Hi, great presentation. In your opinion, what gets the percentage split between strategy and mindset? Well, there's separate things. Is that if you do not have an effective strategy, having a great mind is not going to mean very much. However, there are plenty of people that have highly effective strategies that cannot employ them under pressure. And what you discover is that at the end, this is just like a professional athlete, a professional performer. If you take a look at a Russell Wilson or any of the great athletes, what you see is they spend a lot of time preparing their mind to engage the challenges at that moment. And that would be the main thing, is that as you develop strategy, if you don't have the mind to be able to execute it, the strategy is worthless. There's plenty of people I know that do that. Let me see, where are we at? Jose. Randy, I took the group course last year and have been working on it since then, but lately I just get hijacked immediately and don't ever recognize until it's too late. Any tips? Yeah. Jose, have you taken the every person who takes the group course is allowed to audit a future course free of charge? That's the first thing I would say. A future group course, okay? And the other thing is that it's also that course is open 24/7. What a lot of people do is they keep recycling through the course over a period of time. When I read stuff like this, usually it's a person who has just kind of like, okay, well, I've been there, done that, move on, and then they crash and burn. And sometimes they say, well, maybe I'll need to go back and look at some of that stuff. No, you start the course over from the very start. That's what you do, Jose. And if you have not taken the basically it again free, then that you should, because I don't expect a person necessarily to get this kind of stuff all in one fell swoop.
Rachel again.
Here's Rachel. Why is it easier to show worthiness to others instead of you? What are the root cause? You weren't taught to acknowledge your own worthiness. The great Nelson Mandela once made the statement that it is not fear that we are most scared of. It is actually our greatness. It is actually claiming that when we've been told to be small. And my view is that, and his quote is that your playing small does not serve God. And most people I've met, and I'm a former therapist, and I quit being a therapist when I started doing self-development work. But I can promise you, practically, when a person talks about this, and that worth is learned in that family system. That's where it's learned, and you have to learn to master that family system.
This is Giovanni.
Giovanni. So, you would say that it's better to start with the group course, then move to the individual, or just better to do the individual to go deeper into these negative belief issues over time to begin with? Well, what I'll say is this: is that's all things being equal, yeah, of course, take the individual course. And plus, it's not going to be around in a year and a half, okay? The deal, though, is that we don't live in an ideal world. We deal in a world where a lot of people just simply can't afford the individual course, and I acknowledge that. And look, I realize that my individual course, if you're talking to a guy in Brazil, it's the cost of a new car. If I'm talking to a guy in India, it's the cost of a house. And so what we've done is we've tried to build some systems that allow us to access those particular areas. Huh?
Tell them how much it is.
Oh, it's the group course is basically $4,000, $39.95. Oh, this one, $11.99 and $11.95. So the point is
$11.95. Individual course is $4,000.
Right. That's what I told him. At any rate, the key here is that in a perfect world, I know people who say, Randy, I can lose $4,000 a day. Your course, that's easy. Boy, I have other people that, have to save up to be able to do the group course. I have other people that patch together a course out of the retail materials. And I have other people who watch Randy Howell videos all the time, and they report back to me that it's really helped them a lot. They play videos in the background while they're trading. So Giovanni, I'm not saying one is better than the other. They're two different animals. They're built for different things. If you're in a place where you want individual instruction, then the individual course is the only way. If you're built for saying, I want these basic skills, then the group course is a good way of learning those skills. But I will say the individual course has stuff in it that is just simply not in the group course. I'm looking at the group course is to get the basic information, the basic skill sets you need to produce a mind. And over time, we get a lot of people very thankful that this has actually been unusual. Usually I get a lot of accolades, but I actually have some people who've taken the course and are going, why hasn't this stuck? And I have some good ideas about why it gets unstuck, because what I discover is a lot of people, once they finish the course, it kind of drifts off into the background. This is not about letting something drift off into the background. This is about you recognizing that you have to build a workaround and maintain it for the rest of your life. There's no walking off into the sunset and living happily ever after. This is you work the program and you continue working it and you don't stop.
Just like a star athlete, they don't.
Yeah, it's like you take a look at really top athletes, top concert pianists. They practice every day. They work on situations. They work on stuff. They're great athletes. Tom Brady is probably the best quarterback that's ever been. Does he work? Yeah, he does. He not only practices, but he really does the mind game. He's really doing a lot of strategy. He's ready for those games. So a trader, doubly so. Let's see. Rose, could you repeat the cost of the individual trading program? It's $4,000. I think it's actually $39.95, but $4,000. It can be made in 3 payments. But the major thing is that's anyway, I answered your question. Here's a Giovanni again. Do they progress and reach emotional mastery when they recycle the program over and over? Some do, some don't. I have about there are people I have people who have paid me $4,000 and never showed up for the first session. I have people who drop out at about the 5th or 6th. I have people who get through the course and then in a month or 2, they call me and say, hey, it's all falling apart. And you find out they haven't been practicing. They haven't been maintaining the skill sets. I would say that I have about a 30% success rate with my individual course. And I used to think, oh, that's terrible. But in baseball, if you hit 300, you're in the Hall of Fame. And when you consider a lot of people just simply, they're not willing to put in the effort to be able to produce the change. So it's not like you take something so many times and you get there. if you're not motivated, no matter how many times you take something, it's not going to stick. I'm looking for people who understand vigilance and recognize that your freedom, the price of that is vigilance, eternal vigilance. And that's from Thomas Jefferson, by the way. And that is the way it is with trading. And to be honest with you, when newbies come into trading, they just think this is going to be a cakewalk, and they blow up money. They don't do anything. And once they find out that, no, this is a skill set, you're going to have to change your brain, change your mind. And it is something that is for professionals only. If you're going to be successful, those people drop out. Do they come by me? Do they drop into my group courses? Do they take individual courses? Yeah. I'm looking for the people who want to change, who are willing to say, yeah, I get it. I'm going to have to work on this, because I can guarantee you, we've got the skill sets to teach. We're looking for good students. Okay. Well, we have gone over my allotted time. I want to thank you for being here. It's my honor to have been able to serve you, to talk with you, and hopefully open the door to a better understanding of what it's going to take to produce emotional self-mastery in the face of stress. I want to thank you, and this recording will go up on our website. It probably won't. It won't go up tonight, but sometime tomorrow it'll be there. And if you're interested, walk through this, because we already have people who have signed up for the course, for the group course, and is already into the first class, and they're working it, and they're preparing for the first day. This is the kind of motivation that we're looking for. Going, okay, I'm gonna put the hands to the plow. I have the opportunity. I'm going to take advantage of it now. So I want to thank you. Thank you very much, and be well, my friends. Be well. Take care.